Welcome to my weekly review. You're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, where on Friday it stalled a little bit. If we want to dissect the week day by day, we had Martin Luther King holiday on Monday, but we had the follow through day on a Friday, and then which was our fifth day, I believe, two, three, four, five, yeah. So if you look at the volume down here, if you will, on this follow through day. Help me out here, brother. All right. So the volume was higher than the prior day. Then we come in on Monday, or excuse me, Tuesday, and have a nice, kind of like I don't know, follow through day up, 0.64%, gap higher on Wednesday. 1.28%. And so this gap here of 19,789 did not get filled on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, even though it tried with a low of 19,897. It's still got about a 100-point gap there to fill. And we'll probably get that gap filled because we have mega cap technology stocks reporting earnings this week, and you got Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, and Meta, and so there's going to be caution ahead of this, new data points from these mega cap technology stocks. Also, Jerome Powell is not going to lower interest rates this week, and that should be pretty entertaining in itself. Probably a negative for the market. I don't know. It's all been priced in, though, as we had the 7% correction from the December 16th high of 20,204. And they're kind of pricing in, no more interest rates cuts, at least for the short term. And so that's your 7% correction, repricing that new information on the hawkish cut from Powell on December 18th. So, it's a garden variety correction. We had our follow through day. Now we're back in this uptrend. I know people will say, oh, the Nasdaq looks like a double top. Eh, I wouldn't go there. Let's just take it one day at a time. But since it's a weekly review, I'll go to the weekly and just say the last 2 weeks, the Nasdaq has been pretty strong. Remember, last week was only a 4-day week due to the holiday. So we've had two, strong weeks on decent volume here as the Nasdaq has, traded above its moving average. Sorry for toggling around back and forth here. Just want to get the price action here. 2.45%. 2 weeks ago, and then last week up 1.65%. So those are pretty solid weeks back to back, and you can see it's getting back up near that high. Hasn't made a high like the SPY, but back up near the high. So I'll go back to the daily and just show that the Nasdaq was, on this day it was what 3% above its 50, closed Friday 2.4% above this rising 50. So as long as your 50 is rising and your index is trading above the 50, then it's trading higher. It's in an uptrend. And you can see from these short-term moving averages, which curled down, now have curled back up. So yeah, we're still in that uptrend on the Nasdaq, but I would say the SPY is doing a little better. Why? Because it made a new high. But if you just look at this chart here, if you're looking at it like a stock, you would just say, hey, this is looking like one of those Darvis boxes, right? Set up in a base, ready to break out. Gonna break out anytime soon now above that 609.07. I would expect a couple of days pullback, obviously caution ahead of the mega cap tech earnings. But when Tesla, Microsoft, Apple, and Meta report, I don't know. I just think that the economy's good. They're going to be kicking butt. And I think this thing's going to trade higher, even though we're not going to get our interest rate cut this week from Powell. And that's all priced in. Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. We'll take it one day at a time. It could certainly, crash and burn. Obviously, if it doesn't, if the tech stocks earnings, are not strong. So there's always that scenario, the market can always do three things: go up, go down, go sideways. And if I knew which one, I wouldn't be here. I would own Augusta National. I'd play golf there every day. But that's why we love the market. It's so challenging. And all right, so I got through the SPY, I got through the Nasdaq, and I want to keep these videos shorter. I've been instructed to, and I haven't done a good job at doing that. Anyway, the SPY is 1.9% above its 50, and the Nasdaq's, I don't know what I say, 2.4, something like that. Anyway, they're both in uptrends. And so let's move on to earnings. I'm a big earnings guy. I believe stocks go up because of their earnings and not because of some fancy chart pattern. Netflix reported earnings. I would say it had a pretty decent response there. Nearly a 10% move with strong volume, 319% above the average daily volume. So that was a good start. Kicker to the week on Tuesday afternoon for Netflix. A couple other companies of interest that reported last week. This is GE. They reported a nice report and it ran up. And this is not a stock that's going to run away from you. Got up to 207, now pulled back. For it to come back to its pivot point there of 194.80, call it just 195. I would say that would be, pretty common practice. That would not surprise me. It's not the end of the world if it does come back to that pivot point. Heck, it might even close that gap there, 190 area. All right. But strong report. All they can do is, deliver the goods here. You got 4%, 6%, and now 14% sales growth, and you got triple digit earnings growth. GE, knocked it out of the park, so to speak. All right, Abbott Labs, not one that, I trade, but just acknowledging the strength here. Nice move after its earnings report. Procter and Gamble, another one of these value plays, and, had a nice report, a nice response. And then Intuitive Surgical reported last week, and they got sold off on guidance. Strong report, just guidance. You could see the once again, this is what we look for. 11, 14%, 17%, now 25% sales growth. You can't fake sales. You can fake earnings, but you can't fake the sales. And Intuitive Surgical gave us those strong sales numbers, but they issued weak guidance, and companies do that just so they can under promise and over deliver, standard practice on Wall Street. Anyway, all right, so let's move on. Like I said, I'm trying to get through these a little quicker. I should go to the weekly charts here as I show you these. The last one I want to show is GEV. They reported last week. It's a spinoff from GE. This is GE Vernova Energy Alternative, which is one of the strongest groups. It is the strongest performing groups, but the second ranked group. Anyway, GEV reported up nearly 5% last week, closed at 420. Yes, 49. Thank you very much. I just showed you up nearly 5% for the week. It ran up hard and now it's just pulled back. I could change this moving average. That's your 10 EMA right there. I could change it to the 5 and you could see how it's just kind of hugging the 5 here. I would expect this to bounce next week. Heck, since I mentioned it, I don't want to tease. I don't want to be like, that high school girl that you had a crush on. There you go. There's the 5 EMA, just finding support at the 5. So I would expect that to continue next week. There's going to be a rotation out of this group at some point because that's what we've seen in this bull market the entire time. So I doubt that will change. We're going to see a rotation out of here, but still, they'll come back to these if they do rotate out in the coming days and weeks. I would expect these to have a strong year. I always say, for a stock to go up, 500% in a year, it's got to start with a 100%. And I'm going to get to some of those because we've seen OKLO, OKLO, this is Sam Altman's company. And if you bear with me for a minute here, and I want to show you that, these are the best performing stocks in 2025. I showed you, I got to go to GEV is one. NNE, I'm going to get to all these. VST is in that same type of group. SMR, even Bloom. And so you get the picture here. These energy stocks, 96 is OKLO, the leader, but you got 30, 40, 50, it's 70% growth here. So this is a strong group. And like I say, if a stock's going to go up 500, 600, 700% in a year, like we saw with AppLovin and MicroStrategy and to some extent SMCI last year, they got to start with the 100% gain. And we're almost there with OKLO already. So just wanted to point that out. Not guaranteeing anything, but like I say, if you're going to have a big year, you got to start out, we're going to have a 100% January to have a 800% year. All right. This is Vistra up nearly 12% last year. Excuse me, last week. Nancy Pelosi had disclosed Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi had disclosed a position in VST. They had this fire here. This is your weekly chart. You can see the breakout from that base. They had the fire. This is the fire day. I want to point this out because they had a big fire at Moss Landing with their excuse me, lithium battery plant. Moss Landing's near Monterey, California, largest lithium battery storage plant in the country, probably the world. Anyway, pulled back on that day, only 1.8%. And I said on that Friday, if they can't push it down on negative news, it's got to go up. And it certainly did last week, like I showed you, 11 something percent. So that was the tell on that Friday. I had it on my ready list at MC Stock Charts. I had a ton of them that kicked ass last week. Not to brag, man. I just bragged, so I'm going to suck next week. Uh, just pointing out that, we had a good week of stock picking. Anyway, I shouldn't have said that. I am a big believer in karma. Don't step on the white lines. Don't step on the cracks in the sidewalks. And don't brag about trades, you idiot. All right, Constellation had that government contract announced. It pulled back one day, folks. That was your chance to get in. Pull back one day and just ripped higher. It's up every damn day since with volume, above average volume. So you're saying, how do you buy this? Well, you just, close your eyes, plug your nose, and just hit the buy button. Here it is off the lows. Came down to 222 the first week of the year. Then 3 weeks ago, rallied 21%. 2 weeks ago, nice 3.6% move. And last week, nearly a 10% move. So what does it have in store for us this week? I would imagine it's probably going higher. Yeah, somebody's buying that and it's not Aunt Stella. All right. Any other energy names you want to look at in this group? Alternative energy. This is Bloom Energy. Now, this one's still set up. It rallied straight up off the lows, got up to that pivot point. And you could see that blue dot in the RS line indicating relative strength. But I would say that you gotta watch the earnings dates this week. You don't want to be caught off guard with earnings and have your stock blow up. Especially if you have a large position in it, that could really impact your month and even set you back for the year. So you don't want to start out the year in January when you're digging yourself a big hole because you didn't know when your earnings date was. So definitely keep this in mind. This is a February 6th, so you got a week here for Bloom Energy, but this one looks good. This is a weekly review, so we'll take a look at the weekly, and there you can see that straight up from the bottom. The last 2 weeks, this has moved significantly, 1.4%. Last week, up 25%, we'll call it, with big volume. So yeah, this group is being rewarded. Like I say, subject to change. This is Talon Energy. This is utility electric power. This is in the VST group, not the alternative energy, but they're both strong. And these are AI plays. Last week, Talon was up 4.3% with strong volume. If we take a look at the daily chart, you could see, that 230, we call it 231 area was an area of interest, and it just gapped higher last week on Tuesday and just ran up out of that, what Darvis box, if you will, and now pulled back on Thursday and Friday. I know a lot of people were, not a lot of people, there were some people complaining or just having anxiety about the pullback on Friday. I mean, they're not going to go up every day, and there's going to be profit taking. If you can't stand profit taking, then you should take profits yourself and be an aggressive, sell aggressively and not wait till it pulls back, and sell defensively. And then you're crying in your beer about, you didn't sell at the top. Hell, I never sell at the top. I never buy at the bottom. So get over it. Those people are very rare that can do that. Very rare. All right. I'm going to move on, get off my soapbox. So I'm out of the energy plays, and I didn't go over my Batman stocks because, I just mentioned that four of them are reporting this week. I'm going to get to them right now, I guess. So I'll go over the semiconductor plays. I know on Friday there was some news out of China that, their AI, yeah, whatever. So NVIDIA went down on that news. Bearish engulfing candle. It rallied up though on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and pulled back on Friday. And NVIDIA is not the type of stock anymore that's just going to run away from you and just rip higher. It's a 3.5 trillion market cap. So, yeah, it's just been consolidated in this base and now consolidating in another base for 7 weeks. So it's been, a half a year where it's just gone nowhere. So I'm not going to call it dead money. I'm just saying that it's just not going to be a big mover like it has been in the past. You got to move on to different names as the market has. Broadcom is one of them. You can see this one gapped higher out of this base. Now it's forming like this flat base pattern or shelf, if you will, pull back to the 21. If we didn't have that pattern right there, you could just see that this just formed this little pennant pattern and broke out of it off that support of the 21 last week. So Broadcom had a good week last week, yeah, up 3%. We'll take that. And by the way, I have to show NVIDIA was up 3% last week. If I could type the ticker symbol in there, you could see, yeah, 3.5%, even though it gave some back on Friday. Still had a good week for NVIDIA, so I just wanted to point that out. The Nasdaq had a good week, and a lot of these names had a good week. ARM is another one. ARM's a funny looking base on base pattern. You could call that cup with elongated handle, or you could call it, two bases, this cup with handle, and you also have this like double bottom type of base pattern where it, ripped up on Tuesday or Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday with that, SoftBank news if they're gonna, pledge a bunch of money. But it just pulled back to its buy point, and a lot of stocks will do that. They'll break out, not a fake breakout or a failed breakout, just a breakout and a pullback back to the pivot point. And ARM has done that. I had it on the ready list and it broke out. Nice move, but you sell the spikes, you're a happy camper. If you held, I think you get back like 8% or something on a Thursday. Yes, 7.5%, and another 2.5 on Friday. So that's why we sell spikes. Anyway, that was another successful trade on our ready list. Okay, a couple other ones in this semiconductor group. So I did the energy, the semiconductors. This is Simtech, broke out of a base, now pulled back to the 10. Would not be surprised if it found support and bounced off the 10 there. And the last one is ALAB. I know a lot of people got excited on Thursday because it had that reversal. And this is a stock that's loved by Wall Street. There's a lot of institutional support here. If we look at the fund managers, you got the Lord on its side, Lord Abbott. You got Danoff at Fidelity. You got these growth managers that are increasing their positions. So it's a loved name, and it made this reversal candle on Thursday above the 50. But I'd warned, until it gets through these moving averages. I think it was 128 where I was looking. Yeah, the 21, 127.24. So at least above 128. Did not make it there on Friday. It made it to 127.35 just at the opening tick. This is the old okey doke. They'll give you the old okey doke in the morning, like all the retail guys are going, yeah, okay, this one's up and running. It made this reversal, off the lows, off 112 area. It's going to rip, and all of a sudden, woohoo, rug pull. See you later. Adios, muchachos. I just don't like, buying stocks below their 21. I mean, because this is going to act as resistance now as these moving averages curl lower. I like ALAB. I think it's going to have a big year. It's just a little short-term turbulence here. So stick with it. Keep it on your watch list. They're going to report earnings on the 10th. They'll probably blow it out and make a new high. So, yeah, don't give up on that one. All right. That's it for the semiconductors. I have to go to the software name. So I got energy, software, and semiconductors. Twilio, they didn't report earnings. They just, issued a raised guidance. You could see the gap higher. They have an activist in their company. It wasn't Starboard. It wasn't Elliott Management. Gosh, I forget the name. But oftentimes, when activists get seats on the board and they start disrupting the business, it's usually good for the business because they see things from the outside where they can cut the fat and make the business more efficient. That's happening here with Twilio. But all we care about is stock action and the price. And so they raised guidance and gapped higher, nice 20% move on Friday. I know our friend Mike Webster compared this to BlackBerry in 2003, I believe. The gap higher, and he talks about, waiting for these pullbacks, right? Don't chase, the gaps, wait for a pullback, wait for a pullback. So this thing is probably going to pull back a couple of days at least, probably until the 5 EMA catches up and then find support. So don't, be too anxious in jumping in right away. Because if you buy at 136 here and it pulls back to 130, you're going to be underwater. You're going to have to, cash out. You're going to get stopped out. So just wait, be patient. And as our friend Brian Shannon says, you don't buy the dip, you buy the bounce off the dip. So you want to see strength. I always like to buy strength. Same with ALAB. You buy strength, you don't buy those dips, right? All right, I'm going to move on here. App 11, I had mentioned earlier, this is earnings season, and we're going to get some of these monstrous rips out of some of these stocks, and Twilio certainly could be one. But we went here from like 90 to 417, right? It's a hell of a rip, and you don't need all of that meat on that bone. You just need a part of the meat off the bone, right? This is the day that they front run the S&P inclusion, which App 11 was snubbed on the S&P, and then it sold off the subsequent days, right? And it's kind of forming this base as it pulled back to its 21. Now on what day was this? January 10th, January 13th, it pulled back to its 50 for the first time since the breakout from a base. So that's usually, a gift in a strong trending market. And it was here. It found support and now it rallied. 362.45 is obviously an area of interest. Gosh, also, the trend line here above that. I like App 11, but once again, you got to be mindful of their earnings reports. And I don't know if I had this on the ready list last week, but this is going to be on pretty soon here. This one has shown the ability to make this big move, and it's kind of found support here in making these higher lows. So I like App 11. And then the last one in this group I'm going to show, it's not a software name, it's MicroStrategy. Once again, this one is also what, S&P inclusion. Yeah. And since it got included, it didn't matter. Selling off, the CEO keeps buying more Bitcoin and taking out more debt and selling stock and buying more Bitcoin. It's not paying off for him now. I mean, but if you look, over the past year, you could say MicroStrategy has been a huge winner, 672%, just digesting these massive gains, from the last year. And you want to go back 4 or 5 years, it's one of the leading stocks in the last 4 or 5 years. So just got to give it some time, be patient. Personally, I don't have time and patience for this type of drawback because I would, rather own something like, VST that's going up, right? I want that type of action. I don't want the stall action. So anyway, that's just my style. A couple other names. I'm just going to go through some trades, and since I'm on software, Palantir had this on the ready list last week. Another good trade for the folks at MCStockCharts.com. Once again, this one pulled back to its 50 for the first time since the breakout from the base, and that proved to be a gift. You can see this thing's going up every day. Yeah, probably going to par. 100. I guess a traditional, buy point would be, the 80.91 maybe. Yeah, or, the 84.80. Blue skies above that area. So Palantir looks good. Another stock that I had on our ready list last week was DoorDash, breaking above a downtrend line, but I like this one longer term. If I go to the weekly, this is a weekly review. Yeah, breaking above the downtrend line, finding support at moving averages. But this thing, I believe, has the ability to be, like a monster stock. So that's why I like this one. You can see it's just setting up in a base here on the weekly. It's got the blue dot, very, very strong stock. 5-week flat base pattern for DoorDash. Did I mention VIRT? VIRT was on our ready list, not as strong as VST. You can see on the weekly here the base, the rally up. Now another base. It's kind of straight up from the bottom a little bit. Probably needs some time there from 112 up to what, 150. what was it last week? 155, something like that. Made a new high on Friday, 155.84 and reversed lower. And I know people get upset, but that's just part of the deal. They're not going to go up, make new highs every day and just keep ripping higher and higher. They're going to pull back. You got to embrace pullbacks because people are going to get off the train and it allows people to get back on the train. So 145.57 is their standard buy point, but it's got that gap to fill here at 143.48. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a pullback a couple days early next week and then bounce higher off. Maybe it's 5 or 8 EMA, or maybe even come back to the 10 EMA. VIRT, nice trade though. And another VIRT, VIRT, which was this VIRTube financial services specialty stock. Had this one on our ready list as it traded, it broke above this downtrend line as well. A nice move last week. I didn't trade this one, but some folks at MC Stock Charts had this ready to go, and it made a nice move. You could see the blue dot. This one looks fantastic, longer term with this big cup and now breaking out. So yeah, a lot of the financial names are doing well. It might show up on the ready list for this week. All right. And the last one is Net Cloudflare. You had that 119 and broke above that. Had a nice week. I mean, anytime you're up 6.79%, I think we'll take that. That's a nice week by any standards, right? Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, except for at mcstockcharts.com. I have one more thing. I did mention that the big kahunas are reporting earnings next week. You better know it. I kind of like the Tesla setup here. Made that high, and now it's got this little trend line to break above, and I think it'll do it. Maybe not with earnings. Sometimes on earnings it sells off, but I could see it coming back to the 50 and just ramping higher and just shaking people out and then trading higher. Their story is, the EV story is kind of saturated. They're not going to be selling as many cars, but it's going to be a FSD, a robot, and a power energy, and it's a pretty compelling story. I think Wall Street's going to buy it, and so to me, this is a buy on weakness. Apple, I'm not so sure about Apple. A lot of conflicting stories. The iPhone 16 selling well, and then China, it's losing market share. So huge sell-off going into earnings, almost down to the 200. So I kind of prefer that setup as opposed to making new highs. I'd rather have it at 220 than 260 heading into earnings. I think most people are expecting, pretty negative report from Apple, and Apple's it's a it's a behemoth. They're not going to disappoint too badly. Microsoft, I believe they're going to have a good report. Obviously, traded below the 200, super ugly chart. Rebounded, healed a little bit as we head into their earnings report on the 29th, which is Wednesday. And then Meta Platforms is reporting Wednesday as well, the 29th. That's going to be a big day. Meta broke out of a base. Zuckerberg's talking about spending a gazillion dollars on data centers, AI, and he's just spending money. He's a chameleon. He'll do anything for shareholder value. So if you're a shareholder of this stock, you can appreciate Zuckerberg's position and his willingness. He's flexible to do whatever it takes. You can see the blue dot, a lot of strength in Meta Platforms as it heads into earnings. All right. So those are all the earnings, in honor of the great Steve Jobs. The one more thing. Also, hey, there's a lot of stocks reporting earnings next week that are not mega cap tech. I'm going to get into a couple of them. This is Celestica. This thing has been a monster. My friend Yuri Sola at Sanmina. This thing's set up in a base. They report on Monday. So good luck to Yuri. I know he loves dealing with the analysts. Starbucks reports. Yeah, Starbucks is getting their hat handed to them. Their lunch eaten by literally by Dutch Bros. They report next week. Oh, the boomer trade, the RCL, the leisure services. This is set up in a nice base here as they report Tuesday. Looking forward to Royal Caribbean reporting, and then of course Deckers, Holy Hokas. They're selling shoes. New CEO. We'll see what he has to say, but they're selling the hell out of their shoes. So I would expect a good report from them. And the last one is Team. And I mentioned Team because this thing has shown the ability to really move gap higher with earnings. So this thing's kind of set up here going into earnings. So just a few that I'm watching. There's a hell of a lot more. We'll have a lot of news this week, not only the earnings, but Jerome Powell. And of course, I'm sure our President Trump is going to be chiming in on interest rates as well. Should be pretty entertaining. And a lot of news and a lot of activity and a lot of action next week. So it'll be a busy week. I'm looking forward to it. At mcstockcharts.com, we never give up.